Today, by popular demand for a third interview, I'm talking to Jack Cotton, real estate extraordinaire with Sotheby's International Realty and a top agent in Cape Cod. Jack built and sold one of the most well-respected companies in Cape Cod. He is also the author of the best-selling Selling Luxury Homes and one of the biggest names at Sotheby's International Realty. If you don't know Jack Cotton, you have not been in the company long. Jack talks to us today about how to win listings in a hot, low inventory market. Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. This podcast is to share knowledge for realtors and raise awareness for Give Back Homes, where real estate professionals work together for social good. Jet Centers Aviation, Bentley Atlanta, Legends Global, thank you for your sponsorship. All right, everybody, welcome to the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. Today, we have Jack Cotton returning. Everybody, most of you listening, and if you haven't heard about Jack Cotton, you need to hear about him. He is amazing. He is a real estate agent in Cape Cod. He has sold many, many beautiful homes. He has mentored and coached several agents in Sotheby's and other companies that are top agents around the country. He much of what he does has attributed to my personal success, and we've got him on the show today. Jack, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Jere. It's a real pleasure.
So we are going to talk today about, I think, we'll let you review real quick on your background, but a lot of everybody who listens to the show, we've heard about Jack, we've heard his background, so I want to get to the real meat here.
Okay.
But we are going to talk about the hot market right now, the low inventory, and how do we handle listings and how do we win listings. But first, Jack, you want to give us a little bit of you give us your own version of who you are and what you do and how you got in the business, and then we'll take off.
All right, well, this is this is 2018 of May, which means 44 years for me in the business this month. I started my company in 1974 in my college dormitory room because I knew everything there was to know about real estate. I didn't have to work for anyone else to learn anything because I knew it all. And so,
typical man, some of us would say in the South anyway, but go ahead.
Well, not really. I was just too dumb. I really was a dumb kid and didn't know any better. And so it took me a long time. My first sale, it took over a year to sell my first house. I mean, it took me like a year, 2 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days. Something like that. But anyway, but over time I got smart. I learned all that I didn't know and got more humbled as I got my butt kicked in the market. And I grew my company to the point where in 2005, Sotheby's International Realty thought it was cool enough to want to buy it from me. So they did. And so since 2005, I've been with Sotheby's. I've been managing on and off for them here and there, but I really prefer doing things like this. I prefer listing property, and I like to teach. I go out on the road, try to keep it to once a month, somewhere in the country, and do talks and teach. I'm old now, so I'm at the give back stage of my career. I do sell some houses just to keep my hand in it. I'm like the Betty Crocker test kitchen of real estate, so I can try things out in the marketplace and see if it works. If it doesn't, no big deal. If it does, that's great, and I can share it with other people.
So we get the best of all worlds with you.
I don't know about that, but we certainly try.
I would say so. And some of the things I love to hear you talk about are a few things you're like, I've done everything stupid, so I've learned the hard way.
Oh yeah.
And the other one is, I may not be the best. I say this to people all the time that are in business, and I always quote you: is you may not be the best social media expert, you may not be the best marketer, you may not be the best videographer, you may not be the best technology guy, but what you need to be is be the best at knowing what's in the best interest of your clients and helping your clients find that. That's what's important at being the best at, and that's something we can all be the best at.
Well, not really.
What?
A lot of people could talk about it, but it's very difficult to do in real life. So that's what you just said is my little mantra, and like there's tons of people who are way better at everything than me, but in my market, no one's better at putting the client first. We ask the question 100 times a day, what is in the best interest of the client? And the answer to that question guides our actions hourly, daily, minutely, every second of the day.
I love that. And so here's a question before we get into the listings, because I find that I think sometimes in our business, you probably know how we're rated and how well trusted we are next to, we're down there with car salesmen. What kind of conversations do you find yourself having with clients? Or is it a conversation, or is it just a way in which you do business to remind them and keep them on track for this transaction is about what you want? This is about your results. It's not about a deal. Do you have any conversations you've had you can share with us, or stories?
It's all about a process and letting, I try to learn from other businesses. I think a lot of people in real estate make the mistake of thinking they can only learn from other real estate people. And so I believe you can learn from every business. For example, my dermatologist, she's awesome. I've learned so much by hanging around her office, because I go there 4 times a year to get sliced and diced and all that stuff you have to do when you get older. But what a business she has. She has it down to a science. She has like 6 rooms, and then she has somebody who puts you in a room, and then the person goes around and preps you. Then she goes around and does the surgery. Then someone else comes around and closes you up. It's just such a machine. And one thing they do at every doctor's office, including Dr. Emily, is that they diagnose before they prescribe. And that's the best way you can tell somebody, to convey to somebody that you care about their interests first. Many people in sales are so much in a hurry that they go into a listing presentation, or if they are car salesmen or whatever the case may be, and they just sit down and start prescribing. It would be like if I walked into Dr. Emily's office and she started saying, well, I just want another award for the best cures for headaches. I'm the best doctor in Cape Cod for headaches. And meanwhile, I've got this thing on my face that's killing me. And she's doing a prescription before she did a diagnosis. So the more you can, next time you go to the doctor, anyone who's listening to this podcast, pay attention to what goes on. First of all, you sit in front of somebody typically who either holds a clipboard or hands you a clipboard. In real estate, it's better for the agent to hold a clipboard. People are conditioned to, when they see a clipboard, they'll answer anything you ask them. So pretty much.
Great advice.
Yeah, so ask them questions and understand, when's the last time you sold real estate? What did you like about the process? Don't say, what did you hate about your agent? But say something like, well, if your agent could have done 1 or 2 things better, what would they be? You always want to be professional. We're in luxury real estate. I have ADD and we're jumping around here, but luxury is beyond compare. We don't disparage or compare ourselves to other agents. So we say things like 1 or 2 or 3 things he or she could have done differently or better. And this is all part of the diagnosis that you do before you prescribe. And once you spend enough time diagnosing with a client, they get the impression that, oh, this is a little bit different. That last agent who came in here just started coming in here reeling off all her awards and designations and, all this other stuff, and didn't really listen to what my concerns were. And my market's different in that it's a second home, a resort market. A lot of our homes are older. For example, we have houses that were built in the 1700s and the 1800s. And sometimes you really have to understand, what is the client looking for? We assume they want the highest price. Well, guess what? Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they want someone who's going to appreciate their old house and not tear it down. We see time and time again where people are willing to sell for $1 or $2 million less to a person who's going to preserve this property that's been in their family for a few generations and was built a couple hundred years ago. That's all part of the diagnosis, finding out what's important to those people. The biggest mistake you can make is assuming that someone else wants what you would want. My son is doing, he's so funny. He's got 40 houses under contract. He buys houses. He's got 40 houses.
This is your son?
My oldest son.
Okay.
And he's asking me questions, and he said something like, oh, I'm starting this new business, construction, I think it was, and what do you think I'd do about this? He said, well, the first thing you need to do is find out what's important to the people. He said, well, I already know that. I said, well, how do you know that? Well, because I just know that. I said, well, you don't know that. You don't know that until you talk to them. You assume, you think you know that because you think they're going to want what you want, but you're going to be surprised when you take the time to diagnose and find out exactly what they want, that you may be surprised by that. So kids.
And the details, the thing about, I would even tell your son is, you might have a general picture of what you want. You can go to house.com or you can look at Restoration Hardware, but there are details of things that people want that make make a difference between whether the transaction happens or not, whether you get 4 offers or no offers, or 4 offers or 1 low offer.
Yeah, we never have 4 offers, by the way. We're lucky to get 1 offer. But I wouldn't know what to do.
I thought my market was slow. I thought Atlanta was slow.
I wouldn't know what to do with 4 offers.
Right.
I talked to these people in San Francisco with 14 offers.
14 is like nothing.
I'd be in the corner like this, sucking my thumb.
Exactly. What do you do with that? Yeah. I even asked, I was talking to, I think it was Neil Bassey. I can't remember, but maybe it was 30. I don't know how many offers. And I said, when you get that many, what do you do with that? And I think he even had a formula for it. Had, it's literally like you weed out this many below the price, and then you weed out the rest with terms, and then you narrow it down to 3. And now you're just dealing with 3 offers, but it's crazy, the different markets and how people deal with it.
Well, I'm ready in case that happens here ever. I mean, I've made this spreadsheet for comparing multiple offers. I just never get to use it in real life. We've practiced with it, but we never have multiple offers here. Like I said, we're lucky to beg, borrow, and steal to get 1 offer because, if the planets are lined up and the sun's up and the wind's blowing in the right direction and you had a good night's sleep, maybe I'll think about buying a house on Cape Cod.
Wow. And you still want the listings. No, I'm kidding. So on listings, we were talking before we started the show. I think in Cape Cod, inventory is down 30%. And you meet agents all over the country, and everybody's talking about listings have gotten harder to get. There's a lot of competition. Inventory's down. Even in a good market, we all want to talk about getting listings. But in this market, you've especially got some good things to share. What is, are there 3 key things, or what are the key things to be thinking about and in the mindset you need to be in and understanding the market and how to win that business?
Well, most agents ask me, how do I get more listing leads? How do I get more listing appointments? How do I get in front of more sellers? And they're hearing all this stuff like, mass mailings. And the big thing in real estate is farming. My farmer's got, I've got 45,000 people in my farm and all that stuff. I'm like, gosh, farming, I don't know about farming. To me, farming is like hot, smelly tractor with diesel exhaust and dirt and dust and driving around. I mean, nothing against farmers because we need them, and I love the idea. I would love to have a tractor.
I don't want to be a farmer, though. Right.
I'd love to have a tractor to play around with, but to actually be farming, I don't really see that. I'd rather be like a gardener or into gardening, because a garden, to me, in fact, I did it right before I came here. I did gardening before I came here. The girls came.
You look fabulous, too, by the way.
Yeah, well, because here's how I do gardening. These 3 women come to my house and like, okay, over there, you're going to weed over there. I want all these things trimmed over here. And I want this edged over here. I mean, that's gardening. So gardening is you're dealing with a little patch of ground here and a little patch of ground there. Farming is, 45,000 people. That's not necessary. The reason farming works is that on any given moment, in any given market, whether you're at Buckhead or Cape Cod or San Francisco, between 1% and 3% of the people who live there have a potential interest in what you're doing, which is listing property and marketing it and getting the highest price for the seller in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of aggravation to them. So 1% to 3%. So if I need to sell, 50 houses, that means I'm bad at math here. That means I've got to market to like 5,000 people, right, to have the whole thing come down. And that's back to farming.
I never thought about that, but you're right.
And we don't want to do that. So we want to be gardeners. So why don't we just talk to the 1% to 3% instead of the other 90, instead of the 100%? Let's figure out who the 1% to 3% are. So there's a couple ways to do that. Number one is to, I'm a big believer in open houses for getting listings. I can't think of the last time I sold a house from an open house. I suppose it could happen. I guess if in San Francisco, I know it happens all the time, but for us it doesn't. But it's a great way to meet the neighbors. There's a weird thing that happens in the universe when Joe Seller or Mary Seller decides to put their home on the market. All of a sudden, there are 3, 4, or 5 neighbors who notice that for sale sign, and they think, that's funny they decided to do that because we've been talking about doing this for a year or so. Let's see how they do. Maybe it's time for us to do the same thing if the price is good enough. So it sets this whole thing in motion when a home comes on the market in the neighborhood. So if you're a smart, diligent agent, you can do an open house there. And I'm not saying signs all over the place and ads in the paper. I'm talking about invitation-only open houses where each neighbor gets a hand-addressed invitation like you're having a cocktail party in the summertime in Georgia. And maybe you're going to have an event there. Maybe you're going to do, I hate wine and cheese. I mean, that's like so
overused.
it's overused. But you could have a wine tasting where the head sommelier from your marketplace talks about the best spring pairings for Georgia in the springtime or the South in the springtime. And you have their reputation mentioned in the invitation and talk about the 3 or 4 different wines that are going to be presented and compared and contrasted and what's going to be discussed during the thing. Now you've turned it into an educational event. People value education even while they're drinking. So basically, the more you can convey yourself as the purveyor of knowledge and expertise of the marketplace, rather than just pouring wine for people, the more likely it is that the neighbors are going to come in. Other things we've done successfully is we'll partner with a Mercedes-Benz dealer or a BMW dealer or a Tesla dealer and have them bring 2 or 3 of the new models and set them up in the driveway of your open house. And then you get to tap into their list of people to invite as well. There are certain people in their database who would like to look at the car not in the showroom, but maybe in the driveway of a $5 million house somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so now but the whole idea is it creates a buzz in the neighborhood, and then those 3 to 5 people who have in the back of their mind to sell their properties walk in the door. And then the dialogue to use with them is, no, oh, you want to sell your house too? No, that really doesn't work. You can do that,
exactly. But it doesn't go over well. Not especially not to a certain price point.
Yeah, it's too direct for me. So I'll typically say something like, well, think of your other neighbors in this subdivision or golf club or whatever it is. Who would be the next person to put their home on the market? Think of your neighbors. Who would be the next one to put their home on the market? Here's a hint. If it's them, they'll tell you. You don't have to say.
Well, there's that, and also I always focus on. I'm careful to not be perceived as the agent, as the opportunist, just looking for more listings, but finding the buyers in the neighborhood who want to stay in the neighborhood and go up or down.
What's
and
that?
Then I do a lot of that where so you have an open house, and I have a lot of open houses. A neighborhood I specialize in Atlanta is historic Brookhaven. Well, you've got people moving up and down who never want to leave the neighborhood. So now all of a sudden, you just got a buyer and another listing for your listing, or maybe another listing if this one doesn't work out. But it's the same thing. Yeah, I love it.
Well, so we're going to get listings, and if you get bored when we're done Skyping here, and you were trying to fill up an hour of your time.
Right, because I've got so much extra time. Just ask Isaac.
You have nothing else to do. But here's an exercise. Here's an exercise you could do. You could look at the 10 biggest sales in your marketplace for, I don't know, the last 12 months, and then do some research on the buyers. Where do they come from, and what was their connection to the area? And what you just said a moment ago would be proven correct in that 85% of them will be a friend, a relative, or an associate, or the person who's already there. But they have a people connection 8.5 times out of 10. And so, yeah, open houses are great to tap into neighbors that way. But for getting listings, it's also great, which is what we were
exactly. Exactly. So, a question for you.
There can be 45,000 people in a farm. You can deal with 100 people and just pick the areas you want to be in. The small areas.
Farming's like, I always say to people, farming's like, well, first of all, what does that even mean? Because I think it just means mailing a bunch of stuff out to a neighborhood over and over again.
It's farming.
It's like expensive.
Feed.
Right. But it's like an expensive lottery. It's like you're paying lots of money with no depth, no engagement, no interaction. And if you get the call, the person who calls someone farming, if that's all they're doing, is going to be one in like 10 other agents that got the call. And then you got to have one hell of a listing presentation, which I do. But even on the listing presentation, we're kind of all over the place, but I think this is great information. Is you said, I didn't tap into it much at the time because I didn't want to interrupt you, but you talked about when you meet people about listing their house. I think it's important. I find a lot of people have this idea that there's some presentation they need to do. And you talked about the diagnosis and the questions that you're asking, which I love. It's starting with the questions, starting with the diagnosis before you give the prescription. So you gave some examples. Do you have any like 3 key questions that you ask or you kind of keep in your back pocket, or how do you decide what to ask these sellers at your listing presentations?
Well, here's a thought. Just have a list. And
exactly.
Yeah. Why are you selling? The number one question to ask a seller to find out what their motivation is what are you going to do when the house sells?
I like
I
the
don't
way you
say,
framed it.
I don't say, why are you selling your house? I'll say, what are you going to do when the house sells? Because when they say like, oh, we hadn't thought of that. Well, that's a sign of no or low motivation. But when they can tell you specifically what they're going to do when they sell the house, that's how you can really gauge the motivation. So that's a very important question. How did you choose the, what are you looking for in an agent? When's the last time you sold real estate? What did you like about the process? What are 2 or 3 things the agent could have done differently or better that would have made your experience that much more delightful when you sold your house? I mean, just ask the questions. What do you like about this home? If you could snap your finger and change 3 things about this house, what would they be? And the same thing for the neighborhood. And just write all this stuff down. And then when you're making your listing presentation, you just give it all back to them because then they're like, wow, this person really knows me and my house. And it's like the last day of school, which is coming up in a month, and you're riding the bus home on the last day of school, and you're hopefully graduating to the next grade. What do you do on the bus? Well, you find a kid who has the teacher you're about to have next year, and you ask them all kinds of questions like, oh, does she get much homework? What are her exams? Like, you're trying to get the exam questions before you show up for that class. You want to get as much prep work done as you can, even on that bus ride home on the last day of school. A listing presentation is no different. The initial appointment should be the diagnosis, where you get all the answers to the test questions before you take the exam, which is when you're delivering your listing presentation. So, I don't know. I don't get to take many exams where I get the questions up front. But the listing presentation is the one time where you're going to do an exam, so to speak, and they give you the questions up front if you just ask for them.
So
What criteria are you going to use to hire an agent?
Exactly. Right. Well, there you go. Exactly. What are you looking for in an agent?
Price. Wait, I can stop right now. $12 million. Do I get the listing?
Love it. So do you always do 2 appointments for your listing presentations?
Yes.
And do you ever have, a lot of times sellers are just in a hurry and they just want to know, what's the price? What's the price? Just give me the price. How do you handle that? I already know how you handle it, but I'd love to hear you talk about it.
No, they always do that. And the more they do it, the more I don't tell them because it just makes them crazy. And that's all. It's in establishing who's in charge here. And by the way, I'll just say to them, Jerry, the price that we go to market with in your home is the most important thing we do in the home marketing. Don't you think it's worth the time, effort, energy that I'm going to put into it? When I have enough confidence in my price recommendation to sign my name under it, then I will give it to you. You don't want something off the top of my head for something this important to you, really? Come on.
Exactly.
And the trouble is, a lot of the sellers are watching $1 Million Agent, and they just walk around the house, and then they shoot off a number at the top of their head. We want them to know what the pricing process is. Here's my process. And they learn that in our pre-listing presentation. We spell out our 7-step process right in the listing presentation. It's a very, even though things take a long time to sell here, it's very competitive on the listing side. So I want to differentiate myself by actually having a process for pricing. We don't just pull a number out of the air, so you'll love us. We have this is what we do. So part of what we do is not telling you in the first appointment.
So do you ever go in a listing, and this is me kind of picking on you, but it's true, because we all get this, where you kind of know, you if you know your market. it depends on the property, because a lot of properties you think you know and you don't, because they can be so unique, especially in your market. But how do you, I guess my question really is, like, how do you resist the temptation? There's so much pressure. And so the other agent can give me a price, why can't you? Which you told me, well, the other agent pulled a number out of the sky and I have a process. And isn't it worth the process? But any more advice or insight? Because usually I can resist, but every once in a while I don't resist the temptation. And every time I don't, I regret it. Every time, because I pulled some number out because of the mood I was in or whatever, and I realized I was wrong for so many reasons, and now everything from here forward is based on this stupid number.
Right. You just answered the question.
Yeah, so how do you, is that what you tell them?
I remember the pain. The pain.
Just remember the pain.
Back to pain. I can tell you stories. I went on one listing presentation, first appointment, and I kind of thought it was being played because I know that one of the heirs worked for a real estate company in town, or her sister did, or something like that. And they were just using me to get a number and all this stuff. So I gave them a number on my first appointment, didn't write it down, didn't do anything. So like 2 months later, the other sister calls me up. I'm up in Canada for some Sotheby's conference. And, I think we're ready to list our house. Now, I want to talk about that number you gave my sister. So I have my computer out, and I go to my potential listing folder, and I scroll down for the address of this property. 390 North Bay Road. And I'm like, there's no folder there. Why can't I find? I'm rope-a-doping on the phone, trying to keep her, occupied and with the weather and all that stuff. So I'm trying to find the folder. But then slowly, it takes a while sometimes for the memory to come back. I slowly remembered, oh, that's the one where I didn't follow my process. That's one where I gave a number off the top of my head. And do you think I had any idea what I told the sister what the number was?
Mm-mm.
So I had no idea. So it was really bad. So I just have to harken back to that pain, and it's easy for me to remember. And guess what? If people don't like my process, then go hire the other people. I don't really care. If you don't want to,
There's something to be said for that. I haven't read the book yet, but
Yeah,
this is
what?
a podcast. We can cuss on this podcast. If there's something to be said about that, I don't really care. Number one, Jeremy Stein on our interview, Jeremy Stein in New York, he said, whatever you do, just don't be desperate. Just don't be
Okay.
desperate. It kills everything.
Jerry, you want to hear my dream listing presentation?
Yes.
I've had this fantasy because I
Sold.
fantasize.
Yeah.
Huh?
No, I'm teasing. I said sold. That's it. No, what's your dream listing presentation?
My dream listing presentation. I'm going to pretend you're the seller, and I'm going to pretend I'm the agent, and I'm going to deliver to you my listing presentation. You ready?
I'm ready.
Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So, Jerry, tell me why I should take your listing.
I love it. So have you done that? Am I supposed to
Thank-
tell you? Because I have the best.
That's it.
I have the best Miss Beautiful house in Cape Cod. That's why.
That's the mindset.
Right.
Tell me why I should take your listing. Because I've only got room for 2 more this month, and I only list the best properties because I put so much time, effort, and energy and money into marketing property. I do everything. I monitor everything myself. I can't really take more than 2 more this month. Tell me why yours is the one I should take.
Because I'll pay you more.
Great. Let's sign up and let's go.
Awesome. So have you ever done that?
No, but mentally I do. When I walk into a listing presentation, that's the tape that's running in my mind. And so I'm not desperate for the listing. In other words, I know when I list a house, I have to do all the stuff I don't like to do. Measure the rooms, dictate, write copy, oversee the photography, fill out all these stupid forms. And even though I don't do a lot of it, and I have Maureen does it, I still have to oversee it all. And I'm like, this really has to be good for me to do all this because this is going to be hours of work. And that, I don't do drugs or really drink that much. So to come up with creative marketing, I have to do it with hard labor. So I really, I really have to feel the love here before.
Drugs and drinking may not make it better. You'll just think it's better, just for the record. But
I'm working on my web copy now.
it'll look better to you. Maybe not everybody else. But
And we're working, and that's really, I don't want to take every listing. And if I don't like the house, if I don't like the people, I'm not doing it. I don't need to at this point. I just don't need to. And we like to do fun stuff, we do fun videos, and we're making our videos more and more fun. And so people see our videos, they want us to do a video of their property. We did a video last week. It's going to come out hopefully this week. We have talking fish in the video. The fish were talking to us during the video. It was awesome.
oh wow.
We have one we're going to post this week where a bottle washed up on the beach of the property with a treasure map inside, and I open the treasure map, and it's a whole story about the treasure and the property, and I can't do that for everybody. It's just too much.
That's a lot. Because who does the storyboard for that? Who writes those?
I do.
Wow.
We make them up. We make them up right.
And then,
But
then you've got
it's-
your editor, and you've got to oversee all of that.
Yeah,
I've done a
so-
few. That's why I'm so familiar. I mean, as you know. So
I know. That's why I'm saying
yeah. Like how many of those are
Mentally-
you going to do it for?
mentally, why should I take your listing? Because it's and my people, go crazy because they think we need every single listing because they get worried. I'm like, it's summer. We don't really want a lot of listings. It's summertime. My boat's going in the water. I just got a new camper van, and I really don't. I don't really want to be doing this all summer. We'll get some more listings in the fall.
So here's the question. What if you do want to be doing this all summer? And what if you do want more listings? Now what do you do?
I'm telling you before, open houses is number 1, and gardening
Right.
is number 2. Don't market to 100%. Market to the 1 to 3%. You know this whole thing about sphere of influence? Have you heard of the sphere of influence? Of course you have. Well, I just changed this. I changed the word. It should
Okay.
no longer be called a sphere of influence.
Yes.
It should be called a sphere of influencers. Influencers. So
like
who are the people that I could add? Who are 50 people I could put in my sphere who could each drive 2 to 4 transactions to me in the course of a year because of their influence in the marketplace? And why don't I just market to them? That's gardening versus farming. I'm gardening 50 people, feeding, hoeing, pruning, lighting 50 people rather than 50,000 people. And I'll have more life and more fun and more success as a result of that. So sphere of influencers. Who would influence other people with me in the marketplace?
Get your sphere of influencers. I love that explanation of it. But you can spend a lot of money on a lot of people or a lot of money on a few people, and
you only need 250. Yeah, you only need 250 total people in your sphere of influence. Mm-hmm. Of your 250 people in your sphere of influence, 50 of them should be influencers. But if you know 250 people, and each of them knows 250 people, that's 62,500 people that you can indirectly influence. Mm-hmm. If 50 of those people are influencers, then it's even ramped up because you can come up, so who's a person who could refer 2 to 4 deals to me per year? It's obvious: architects, builders, CPAs, lawyers. I mean, it's easy. Mm-hmm. I mean,
Exactly. So
when you garden to them.
Exactly.
Take them out to lunch.
Well, I was going to say, it's key.
When's their birthday?
Birthdays are huge. Their kids' birthdays are huge. Yeah. But it's key to figure out. I think a lot of people go, like, mortgage brokers. How many mortgage brokers call real estate agents? Because we're influencers for them. So I always say to them, like, until you can give me your value specifically, I've already got too many commitments.
Right.
So what are some examples of, I already know, but you've got some great examples of how you develop influence with your influencers?
Well, bring value to them. Number one, just to be valuable to them and make them look like heroes to their clients. So my little path has always been to be the trusted real estate advisor to the influencers who can in turn help their people. So like accountants, lawyers, trust officers, estate planning attorneys, family offices. Google Atlanta family offices. Because people who are really, really, really rich have their own family office. Mm-hmm. People who are only a little bit rich, like 50 or 100 million, they share a family office with a family office service. So you can market your expertise to them for valuation, for example. They need CMAs. I can give them the whole big thing here. We talked about it before, but mm-hmm. These people, for estate planning purposes, typically need a CMA every year. And by the way, think about your insurance person. Think about your retirement planning person. Think about your physician. Don't they give you yearly updates?
Exactly.
Why aren't we doing that?
Why aren't we doing that? Exactly.
When you sell a house a year from today, why aren't you saying, hey, it's been a year since you've been in your house. I thought you'd like to have an updated market analysis. This one's really quick. If you need something more detailed and more, whatever, I'll be happy to do that for you too. But I just think as a trusted real estate advisor, I just want you to be current with where the market is today for your planning purposes.
That's value. Like, what is it saying? Success is looking for a good place to land. And when you do things like that, you give it one.
Yeah, you're bringing value to people. You're being a trusted real estate advisor is what I want to be to people.
Exactly.
We just sold a house. I was teaching a class. I wrote this new class. It's 2 days, 8 hours a day for 2 days.
Okay.
And so I was teaching my inaugural class on Cape Cod in January. It's like people are like killing themselves to come to this thing, literally, because we had an ice storm. So they're like
wow.
They're all like bleeding on the sidewalk from slipping and falling on the way to my class. But anyway, during the class, I had multiple offers, which never happens here.
So you do get multiple offers after all.
There's only 2. But get this, I had 2 buyers. I've never had 2 buyers before. It wasn't my listing. I had 2 buyers, and that was a mess. The bottom line is, during the 2-day class, I was able to sell a house to this guy for just under $6 million. And the cool thing was happening during the class, so it made the class even more awesome. But the other cool thing was that the guy never even came to the house to see it. This is all over the phone, sight unseen. And the other cool thing was the fact that I got the guy because I've been doing his yearly CMAs on his other house as his
Oh,
trusted
man,
real estate
that's
advisor. So
huge.
when he decided he wanted to buy the house across the street, so when his mother comes to visit, he could be in his own place. He just said, I know I've seen it from across the street. I can sit on the porch and see it. I don't really need to see the inside. What do I need to do to buy it? I said, well, I would offer full price if I were you. But I was his trusted advisor. He was comfortable doing that. We'd kind of met once, but I've been doing CMAs for him, and it turned into a nice sale.
So what do your CMAs look like? Is it just a brief CMA that your MLS
No,
pulls together, or is it pretty in detail?
my CMAs are very detailed. And my theory is that a really good CMA should weigh a lot. So before we send it out, we put it on a scale to make sure it weighs at least 5 pounds, because anything less than 5 pounds.
Wow, really?
No, I'm kidding. But
Okay.
but they are heavy. They're like 50 or 60 pages. We bind them, and
Okay.
I can send you. I wrote this little PDF book. I can send it to you. It's called My Listing Presentation Field Guide.
Okay, that'd be great.
It's everything you need to do a listing presentation. It has my cover letter word for word in the PDF. I'll send it to you. And if anybody wants to, you can share it. I don't care. And it has my actual CMA letter, because then we have all the maps and all the crap. But I don't in spreadsheets and all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
So it's
right.
very-
We're going to make
we have
sure
it
you
down
have
with
my
science.
address. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do a 50 to 60 page CMA letter. What's in that 50?
With an executive summary at the beginning. So people don't read the whole thing, but I want them to read the summary, and I just want them to know, because they're all going to hate my number. Usually they do, and so at least mine weighs more than the other people's. It's got to be true. It weighs
That's
so
a
much.
good point. You're right.
Right.
So,
It's very
Maureen, does
brief.
Maureen do these for you, or who does all this work?
Maureen and Marcus, yeah. And
Okay.
they both, then I do the final go through, because that's what people are paying me to do. I mean,
Right.
just
Oh,
like-
absolutely.
yeah, they do the setup. But I've created I have templates for everything. We can literally do one in 30 minutes.
Wow. And how did you create this? Because I've never seen a 50 to 60 page CMA, not even appraisal. I mean, that's intense.
If you ever saw a narrative appraisal,
Well, yeah,
that's what they look like.
that's pretty
And
much
that's
what it is.
When I was 44 years ago, when they started out, I looked a lot younger than this. I had black hair, and I didn't shave yet, and I was competing people who looked like me. And so back in 1974, we didn't have all the stuff we have today. We did have the alphabet, though. There was 26 letters in the alphabet, much like there are today, and all A through Z. And we actually had the letters. We had the letters C, M, and A, but no one had ever put them together. They were in their usual place in the alphabet, all spread out. No one had ever taken the 3 letters out of the alphabet and put them together into a CMA. So back in those days, people just walked into a house and they looked around and here's the number. So I'm competing with all these people, so I decided to do 50-page narrative appraisals to differentiate myself from all the competition who had more gray hair, more wrinkles, and more experience and a bigger track record than I had. And so I took appraisal classes, and that's what I did. So now what we've done since that is we've found a way to make something that looks like a narrative appraisal, but made it easy even realtors can do it. Like even realtors like me can do it. So we've simplified the spreadsheets to make them really easy to do. It still looks like a narrative appraisal. I mean, the IRS,
That's awesome.
the IRS in Boston would call me up and say, hey, somebody did an appraisal on this estate. Would you take a look at it for us? Because we think their number's crazy. I want to get your opinion. So our CMAs were so good that the IRS was calling us up to look at other people's work on actual appraisals. So,
wow, that's why. I mean, talk about credibility. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see this. So we're starting to run out of time.
Okay.
You're so much fun to interview. I love all your insight and perspective, and Jack's always keeping it real for us, which I appreciate. What is the one piece of advice you have for people, if there's just one, on winning listings?
One piece of advice. I mean, it just comes back to asking that question: what is the best interest of the client, and just do everything in the best interest. And if they don't get it, there's 2 reasons why they didn't get it. Number one, 10 to 15% of people are never going to get it no matter what you do, and just be okay with that. But the other 85% of the time, you don't get it. Learn from what you did wrong. I don't have any problem calling a seller. If I don't get a listing, I don't have any problem calling the seller and saying to them, I'm sad I didn't get the listing. I really appreciate the opportunity. Can you tell me one thing I could have done differently or better that might have made a difference in your decision?
I love the way you phrase that question to get an answer. Yeah. Can you tell me one thing that would have made it different, as opposed to why didn't I get it?
Because people say, why didn't you hire me?
That's that makes them defensive. That's a terrible way to ask a question.
Yeah, and it's hard, even then, it's hard to get a truthful answer from them. But it's typically either a commission or a price. And, so I always leave everything on good terms because I know that in life, there are 3 great things to be in life if you can possibly pull it off. And that is either a firstborn son, a second wife, or a third realtor. And so I always leave relations good because oftentimes I'm the third realtor. And by then, if they're really ready, they're all beat up and they're ready to go.
That's it. When you don't get one, it's always you're teed up to be the third realtor, which is always the best, to be the second or third one. So give us. I want to know. I want you to share with us. You've written a few books, but the one that's so well known, I want to share. I want everybody to hear about your books again, and then.
I had one here. I could have held it up, but I didn't think I had. I had to reload Skype before this thing started. But anyway, Selling Luxury Homes. You can find it on Amazon, or you can go to jackcotton.com and you can learn all about it. And Selling Luxury Homes. It's a cool book.
So it's a great book. It goes into great detail and gives fun stories about your listing presentations and being put on the spot and what to do and it's great. And what is one book other than Selling Luxury Homes that you would recommend that we all read to make a difference in our business?
Oh gosh, there's so many of them. I just finished Ray Dalio's book, Principles. You know Ray Dalio? He owns the largest hedge fund in the world. He started it. He's actually. Sometimes I'm proud of what I've accomplished in 44 years, but then sometimes I feel like a total loser.
Then you look at people like Ray Dalio. Yeah,
because he started at the same time I did, and he's worth $20 billion. But anyway, he wrote this book called anyway.
What is the name of it? I already forgot. What is the name of it again?
Principles.
Okay.
Ray Dalio, Dalio. But he owns the most successful hedge fund in the world. Interesting, very interesting book. It's a big read, but a lot to read.
So what's the one takeaway you think for you out of that book for us?
It just reaffirmed my belief in process, having a process for everything. And he's actually done more to quantify his processes.
Interesting.
But I'm a very forgetful person and scattered and ADD, so I needed a process so I remember to do stuff. And if you think about this, process is really what creates a luxury experience. I mean, you think Ritz-Carlton makes it up every time you show up at the front desk? You think the Capitol Grill restaurant makes it up every time a guest shows up at the front door? No, they have a process for everything. They have a process for how they set the table. They have a process for how they, have all the dishes pointed. They have a process for how the phone is answered. And that's what creates a luxury experience that surprises and delights their guests. It's all about the process. And so he reaffirmed my belief in process and got me thinking that I need to refine and retune and enhance my processes even more than I have already.
Wow. Interesting. Well, thank you for that
pleasure.
Perspective. Well, Jack, it was awesome to have you. Is there anything else we should ask you or you should add to this? There's probably like 20 before we close it out.
No, we'll just do it again sometime. Don't be a stranger.
Definitely. It's back at you. Yeah, it's good to see you.
Okay.
All right. Well, I will see you soon, and maybe at the next G&E, which is like a year away. So hopefully sooner than that.
All right. I'm around. Bye.
Great. Bye. Talk to you soon.